Hello everyone. Today we will continue to follow a special love story of Dan, a local police officer for a single mother named Dieuhan and her little boy Tom. Dieuhan is a petite girl with eyes that always carry a hint of sadness. She lives with her son Tom, who is just over 1 year old, in a small thatched house deep in the forest. Every morning, before the sun has even fully risen, Han ties her long hair back, carries Tom on her back, and heads out to the garden. Wild peppercorns, cassava, and bananas from the forest are their sources of livelihood. Han carefully gathers what she can and takes them to the local market to sell, earning money to buy rice, cooking oil, and medicine when needed. Her life is far from abundant, but full of determination. Though there are times when Han is exhausted, the innocent gaze and laughter of her child are the motivation that helps her keep going. Their life quietly flows on like this until Dan, the local police officer, steps into their world. Dan is a kind and gentle man who often patrols the area, helping the people build houses and repair roads. When he learns about Han's situation, Dan starts coming around to help her with small tasks, like fertilizing the plants, fixing the chicken coop, and watering the garden. Although busy with his own duties, Dan is always willing to lend a hand. At first, Han is cautious and unaccustomed to letting a stranger into her life, but Dan's sincerity and quiet support gradually make her open up. He never asks about her past or judges her present. He simply stays by her side, like a friend, like a brother. And in Tom's eyes, Dan seems to be the only person besides his mother that he truly trusts. Under the scorching midday sun, the heat seemed to burn everything around. Yet Han was still out alone in the garden behind the house. She was picking the last few ripe bananas in the garden, hoping to take them to the market in exchange for some rice or a little milk for Tom. Sweat drenched her shirt, the fabric clinging tightly to her thin skin. Carrying the heavy bunch of bananas into the house, she felt dizzy and overwhelmed. The air inside the house was no less stifling and oppressive. She placed the bananas in the corner of the kitchen, then leaned against the wall and went to get a cloth soaked in water to press against her forehead. Lying on her side in the corner of the bed, her forehead flushed red, eyes tightly shut from exhaustion. That afternoon, at the district market, Dan stood in front of the familiar vegetable stall where Han usually appeared every day. But today, she didn't come. A restless feeling made him drop the shopping bag and rush on his motorbike straight towards the forest area where Han lived. After a few winding turns and a dusty dirt road, he stopped his bike in front of the simple thatched house. The door was slightly ajar. He called out, "Han?" No answer. He gently pushed the door and stepped inside. On the bed, Han lay on her side, a dry cloth on her forehead, her face flushed, breathing heavily. Dan stepped closer and placed his hand on her forehead. She had a high fever. She must have been lying there since noon, probably from the intense sun and exhaustion. Without hesitation, he hurriedly got on his bike and sped to the nearest pharmacy at the edge of the commune. He bought some fever medicine, cold medicine, and a little milk for Tom. Then he stopped at a fruit stall by the roadside to buy some oranges and a bag of apples. Returning home, he quickly lit the stove and cooked a simple but steaming hot pot of porridge. Quietly, he placed a small portion for Tom in a bowl and fed the boy spoonful by spoonful. Tom obediently sat still. Dan's presence had become strangely familiar to him. When the porridge was ready, Don carefully carried a bowl to the bed. Han had just opened her eyes weakly. He helped her sit up, propped a pillow behind her back, and gave her the medicine with a glass of water. Han's trembling hand took the pill, struggling to swallow every sip of water. She looked at him, eyes full of surprise and gratitude. Not everyone would drop their work, brave the scorching sun to buy medicine for a woman living alone in the forest, like her, let alone cook and take care of her child as well. The wooden house, once silent and isolated in the forest, now felt warmer, not just from the heat of the porridge, but because of a sincere feeling quietly kindling inside. A love without grand gestures or flowery words, just in action silent, yet deep enough. One day the weather was neither rainy nor sunny. The atmosphere was strangely calm and clear. In the small house nestled deep in the forest, Han no longer wanted to live like this. She decided she had to leave, to find her biological parents, so that her life would no longer be a series of unanswered questions. She quietly thought she would walk to the nearest large town and then find a way to the city. On the winding little forest trail, Han carried Tom in her arms, walking slowly but with determination. The gentle breeze blew through the trees, and the rustling leaves seemed to cheer for her journey. Unexpectedly, on the way, Don happened to appear. He was on his way to work when he saw the mother and child walking along the red dirt forest path. Seeing her tired steps and determined eyes, Dan immediately sensed something unusual. Dan stopped his bike and approached them, asking, "Han, why are you and Tom walking out here like this? Where are you going?" Han looked up, slightly surprised to see him, then sighed and replied, "I've decided to go to the city to find my biological parents." Don looked at her with eyes full of concern and sympathy. After a moment's thought, he decided, "Let me take you both to the city. I will help you." Han hesitated for a moment, then nodded in agreement. She felt the warmth and sincerity from Dan, who had quietly stood by her side all these years. That afternoon, the three of them, Dan, Han, and Tom, began their journey to the city together. On Don's old motorbike, Tom sat in the middle, held tightly by Han, while Don drove steadily over the rugged dirt roads. The wind blew against their faces, mingling with the rustling forest sounds, like a call to a new future. They stopped at a main road leading to the city. The bike finally arrived. Han, holding Tom, quickly stepped onto the bus. She didn't forget to turn back and bow her head in thanks to Dan. Dan watched the vehicle until it became just a small dark dot at the end of the road. That night, Dan couldn't sleep. A deep longing for Han consumed him, partly out of affection, but also from worry. He feared for her safety, a petite woman venturing into the big city alone, with no one to lean on and no familiar faces to turn to. The next morning, Dan knew he couldn't just sit still. With the genuine love he felt for Han and little Tom, he made up his mind to ride his motorbike to the city, determined to find them, support them, and protect them during those first, most difficult days. He didn't want them to face the challenges ahead all alone. His solitary journey began in the soft light of dawn. The road turned out to be far more treacherous and exhausting than he had imagined. Though accustomed to mountainous terrain, the long journey by motorbike with steep passes and winding roads wore him down. By twilight, when the sky had already begun to darken, Don had no choice but to stop and rest in a dense forest clearing by the roadside. With no nearby houses or shelters, he laid out a small blanket and set up a makeshift tent, doing his best to create a safe spot to sleep through the night. Before closing his eyes, he couldn't help but think of Han and Tom, his heart filled with worry, but also hope that they were okay. The image of Han, clutching little Tom in her arms, resolutely walking toward the city despite all obstacles, haunted his mind. In that vast and unfamiliar place, full of strangers and dangers, how would she, an unaccompanied single mother with no family or support, manage to endure all the hardships? He feared she might be hurt, lost, or overwhelmed by the complexity of a world where he wasn't there to protect her. He remembered their days together, how he cared for her tenderly when she was sick. And now, as she embarked on a distant journey, his heart ached with worry. He prayed for their safety, wished for good fortune to guide their path, and hoped that they would reunite soon to face the future together. Though the forest night was cold and his body weary, his heart remained full of hope and strength, the kind of strength that comes from love and the desire to protect the people he cherished most. Love is not always about grand gestures or poetic words. It is often about quiet understanding, genuine care, and persistent devotion expressed through simple, silent actions. For Don and Han, their love wasn't a fleeting flame that burned brightly and vanished. It was a clear, cool stream flowing deep into the heart, weaving through hardships, loneliness, and unspoken pain. It wasn't easy for a man like Dan to open up and show such profound emotions, but with Han, he realized that he wanted to protect her, to walk beside her, to let her know that in this vast and challenging world, there was someone who cared deeply and would always be there to share her burdens. Their bond wasn't built on sweet words. It was forged through quiet sacrifices. Don gave up his precious rest days to visit Han when she was ill, bringing her medicine, food, and tender care. He knew that his presence alone was the greatest comfort he could offer her. And for Han, that love became a source of solace in a harsh life. She had once believed she could only rely on herself, but with Dan by her side, she no longer felt alone. His care gave her the strength to push through the difficult days, to dream of a brighter future for her son. Their love was built on patience and respect. What made their connection so special were the simple, sincere moments that only they truly understood. A gentle handhold when Han felt weary, a tender gaze as Don watched Tom play, soft conversations about distant dreams and quiet hopes. At times, their feelings were tested by distance, by fear, by the weight of uncertainty. Don endured sleepless nights, aching with worry for Han as she ventured alone into the city. And Han, in turn, faced the loneliness and fear of leaving behind all that was familiar. But it was these very trials that deepened their love and made it more enduring. They learned to trust, to cherish every moment together, and to stand strong against the storms life brought their way. Their love held no dramatic promises, no elaborate declarations, but it was honest and profoundly sincere. Like a small flame quietly glowing in the heart, it warmed them both, even through the coldest times. May Dan find Hun and Tom again on a bright morning beneath the rising sun.
Điều làm cho tình cảm của họ trở nên đặc biệt hơn chính là những khoảnh khắc giản dị, chân thực mà đôi khi chỉ có họ mới thấu hiểu. một cái nắm tay nhẹ nhàng khi Hân cảm thấy mệt mỏi, một ánh mắt âu yếm nhìn Tôm đang chơi đùa. Những câu chuyện nhỏ kể về những ước mơ, về những dự định xa xôi. Đôi khi tình cảm ấy cũng được thử thách bởi những khó khăn, bởi những khoảng cách và nỗi lo lắng. Danh từng phải trải qua những đêm không ngủ vì nhớ Hân, vì lo cô gặp nguy hiểm khi một mình lên thành phố, còn Hân thì phải đối mặt với bao nỗi cô đơn, với sự bất an khi rời xa mảnh đất quen thuộc. Nhưng chính những thử thách ấy lại càng làm cho tình cảm của họ trở nên sâu sắc và bền bỉ hơn. Họ học cách tin tưởng, học cách trân trọng từng phút giây được bên nhau, học cách kiên cường đối diện với sóng gió. Tình yêu ấy không có những lời thề nguyện hứa hẹn xa xôi, nhưng lại chứa đựng sự thật thà và chân thành đến lạ thường. Nó như ngọn lửa luôn cháy âm ỉ trong lòng, sưởi ấm trái tim của hai con người dù trong hoàn cảnh khó khăn nhất. Mong rằng Danh sẽ tìm thấy Hân và Tôm trong một ngày nắng sớm.